Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show discussing the wonderful world of landscape photography. This time I'm talking to Matt Barbeau about his photography journey. Originally from Canada, Matt is known for his amazing Australian forest scenes and seascapes. We talk about his wildlife and drone photography, how and why he's become a full-time photographer, and the impacts of social media on mental health and well-being. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Grant.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me.
So, no worries.
I've been watching a bit of what you've been doing, and I guess how would you describe what you do to somebody that you had just sort of met?
As in my style of photography?
Yeah, your photography. Yeah.
Well, it's changed quite a bit, but most recently I've been focusing a lot on woodland photography. So if you go to my Instagram page, anyone new to the page would see just a lot of photos of trees, which is not everyone's cup of tea, but
I've got to say they're beautiful photos of trees.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been fun learning how to shoot. Just shoot trees in general and find good compositions in the forest.
Okay. So what got you into doing that?
What got me into it? Nothing in particular. I've just always been drawn. I've always been drawn to the outdoors, and I love nature in general. I love going for hikes, and I'm always on the lookout for just beautiful scenes out in nature. I follow quite a few photographers that do woodland photography quite well.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I started watching a lot of their YouTube tutorials and that kind of thing, and I just wanted to give it a go myself, and it's been quite a challenge and a new challenge, so it's kept my interest in photographing trees.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest challenge there to somebody that's just sort of thinking of doing something similar and wanting to get started? What have you got to think about? What have you got to do that's different to any other sort of photography?
Yeah, so definitely, composition is always going to be important in any style of photography. But with woodland photography, finding those compositions is probably the biggest challenge because it's so chaotic. So it's finding basically order in all that chaos. I
guess separating your subject from the background, branches, trees, trunks,
exactly,
shade, and all that sort of thing.
Exactly, because it may look nice to the eye, and then as soon as you take the camera out and you start trying to compose the scene, all of a sudden you realize, okay, this might not look so good as a photo.
Sure.
So that's probably the biggest challenge, I'd say, is finding good compositions and, as you said, separating your subject and really making your subject stand out.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So what's got you started with photography right in the first place? When did you sort of start your photography journey?
So I'd say I've always been into photography sort of as a hobby. When I was younger, I always had point and shoot cameras. I remember my earliest memory of actually taking photos that I'm still proud of to this day was in New Zealand quite a number of years ago.
Yep.
And I'm just shooting on a point and shoot film camera, and of course having to process them later, and then seeing a good photo come out and getting all excited, right? It's before the digital age, basically. But it wasn't until I'd say 5 or 6 years ago when I really started taking it seriously and invested in a proper DSLR, and just started learning as much as I could and trying to take as many photos as I can, really.
You're obviously not from Australia, but you live in Australia. When did you sort of come out to Australia, and what's a bit of your background?
So I'm from Canada. I moved here I'd say in 2018. I've spent time here before. Like I've backpacked around Australia when I was younger. I met my girlfriend in Indonesia, and she's from Sydney.
Okay.
So I was traveling for a year when I met her, and at the end of my travels, I just decided to move here and give it a go, and I've been here ever since.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So have you shot elsewhere other than Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, so I've taken a couple of road trips across Canada.
Yep.
And photography specific road trips. When I was traveling for a year, I was traveling with an old Canon 40D.
Right. Yep.
And this was, I was taking photography seriously, but probably not as seriously as I take it today.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I could do it all over again, I would go back and do that trip and probably take some better photos. But during that time, I went to Indonesia. I went to Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos. So a lot of the Southeast Asia, and then travel over to Europe and the Middle East as well.
Right.
Which was really great. So I've got a lot of good photos from those trips, but as I said, I'd love to be able to tackle them again.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of people in that situation. There's plenty of trips I've done where, I really could have done better, or got to that location at a better time where there was better light.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why was I shooting that in the middle of the day?
Yeah. Well, some of it is just where you happen to be when you happen to be there.
For sure.
That's one of the hardest parts, I guess, of traveling, is making sure that you've got somewhere. Or you've got time to get somewhere to get a good shot. And I think one of the challenges with travel is also you don't get to necessarily do repeat visits to a location, and that being able to repeat really makes for the ability to get a better shot.
Absolutely. Unless you spend a few weeks in one location and you have the opportunity to revisit that same spot over and over again, you gotta kind of hope for the good conditions on the day you're there.
Yeah. So what's the furthest you've traveled to get a shot?
Well, I'd say most of the shots that I'm most proud of have come about within the last couple of years. And so I've taken a lot of solo photography trips around New South Wales.
Okay, cool.
So most recently, I went up to, before all the lockdowns, I went up to New England National Park.
Yeah, yep.
And that was with the intention of just shooting forest photography. And I knew exactly where I want to go. Like, I'd already been up there, scouted the location.
Yeah, great.
So I knew all the trails I needed to hit. I just needed the right conditions. So I ended up, and that's about, I guess, 7.5 hours north of Sydney.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's probably the furthest I've been to, specifically get certain shots.
Yeah.
And I did. I came here.
Sorry, how long did you stay up there when you were on that trip?
About a week.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And I was revisiting the same trees like almost every day.
Yeah, just different lighting conditions and
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, particularly when they're traveling around, they don't take the time to do that unless they're there specifically to do photography.
Yeah.
I know I certainly don't, because I've usually either, got the wife with me or other members of the family, or I'm visiting people and whatever. So there's always something else to do, or I'm traveling for work, one of the other.
Yeah. And you're with people who don't want to wake up, at the break of dawn to go and shoot sunrise.
Yeah. That's always a struggle, finding other people that want to get up at ridiculous hours so that they can stand there and watch you take a photo.
That's why I take these photo trips solo, Grant.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
So, how much you say you obviously knew the trails, etc. How much planning went into that trip or a similar sort of trip, how much planning would you put into that before you even sort of get in the car and go out?
So, as I said, I'd been there once before, and I knew more or less where to find the trees that I want to photograph.
Sure.
And it kind of took a little bit of, you know, I sort of had an idea where I was going, but I had to do a quick hike when I was up there to make sure that they were located where I remembered they were.
Yep.
But the only planning I could really do from Sydney was try to pin those locations.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, go back online and see if I can, find any information with some images. But that's really it. Like, I'd only been there once before, so it was basically, okay, I'm going up there with the intention of finding these trees and photographing them in sort of my ideal conditions, and hope for the best. And I basically stayed about an hour away from the national park, so every morning I was up at like 4:30.
Yeah, to get there for sunrise. Yeah,
to get there for first light, exactly.
Yeah.
So really, yeah, there wasn't really that much planning that I could do, other than when I was up there and just sort of scout it out again.
Sure.
But I lucked out and I found them fairly quickly, and I knew I can just go back every day.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's fantastic if you can really sort of lay out that broad plan and then work it through as you get there, because you're never going to know weeks ahead what the conditions are really going to be like, whether you're going to get fog, whether you're going to get clear blue skies.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to go up there with the intention of just, as I said, like photographing these trees and nothing else. And in the past, I would have tried to shoot too much.
Yeah.
Like, there were a couple mornings where I was driving up and the light was looking amazing.
Yeah.
But I was nowhere near where I wanted to be.
Right.
I thought about like pulling over and sending the drone up and getting some sunrise shots, but I knew I would potentially miss my opportunity of where I really wanted to be. So I just kind of drove through, and I was like,
kept going.
Yeah, kept going and kind of trying not to look in the rear view at that beautiful light.
There's places like that where I've driven past at various times and seen great light and thought, oh, I should pull over here one day, and I just never have.
Yeah.
It's usually on a sunset. There actually used to be a spot when I was when I was actually going into the office to drive, and I drove past it some evenings, just about sunset, and you could just see this beautiful light. There was a nice valley there, and many a time thinking, I should just pull over, never having the the DSLR with me, just the phone.
Yeah.
never occurred to me to sort of plan it out and take the DSLR into work and
yeah, exactly,
and do the full job on it, unfortunately. But you sometimes miss those sorts of things, but I do know some other people get into it.
Yeah, well, there's always a next time, I guess.
No, that's right. There's always another time. It's not like the place is going to shift. It's just the conditions. You just got to be there at the right time with the right atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
So, what's your main creative motivation? What is it that gets the juices flowing? Is it looking at other people's work? Is it looking at your own work and saying, I could improve that, or what?
Yeah, I think so, because one thing about looking at other people's work is it's too easy to compare yourself.
Yep.
And go, I'm not taking photos like that, and get discouraged.
Yeah. Yep.
So while it is inspiring, I try not to put too much weight into it. So yeah, definitely looking back at older work and seeing where I'm at now and going, okay, I have improved.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm not really taking the shots that I want to. Well, okay, 2 years ago, I certainly wasn't getting those shots, and I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only, room for more improvement, I suppose.
Yeah. I think with social media, a lot of people forget that everyone goes through that, not just a creative, but also a skill curve where, you start out not knowing what you're really doing, and, you're just seeing something. You don't know much about composition. You don't know much about processing and whatever, or you might have a base mix of skills. But as you move up that skill curve, you start to realize what it is that you've got to pay attention to, what you can and can't ignore, and so forth. But, particularly when you're looking at other people's work, the guys that you might look at that blow your mind, you look at those shots and they just, your jaw drops.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can compare yourself against those, and until you've put that same amount of effort and time into, learning the craft and learning how to take and process your shots.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of people forget that, or don't. They're just not conscious of it. And I guess one of the problems with social media is that then ends up being something that people beat themselves up about, because they're not measuring up to an ideal that they just haven't got the skills to do yet. And not everyone gets those skills. Not everyone has the drive or the impetus to do it. But doing that comparison, I think that's a really healthy attitude. Not comparing yourself and saying, looking at it going, wow, I'd love to be able to do that. Is important, but recognize that person's been doing this, and different people move up that skill curve at different rates.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point they were where you're at, right?
Exactly.
Everyone has to start somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody's doing it in a week or a couple of days. Yep. It's taking a few years. What is the measure? 10,000 hours.
There you go.
To master a skill. So
yeah, exactly.
Some people will put that 10,000 hours into a year. Other people won't.
Yep.
And so knowing where you are and knowing what you've got to do to improve, and look at your own work and look at the improvement from where you started to where you are now, I think is a much healthier way of looking at it.
And it's too easy, I think, when you're first starting out and you're on social media and you're looking at all these other people, it's too easy to fall into sort of that same trap of trying to do too much.
Yeah.
Right. And you're trying, maybe too many styles. You're trying to, edit in a certain way. Yeah. And then you're editing one image differently from, the next image. And there's no, I guess after a while, that's how you develop your style, right? Once there's a bit of cohesion across all the photos.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right there. So with lockdown and everything, when was the last time you actually went out to shoot? Was it that trip up to the forest up there in New England?
I was up there about a week before Sydney went into lockdowns. That was my last photography trip, and that was the last time I picked up a camera.
Yeah, I've taken all the batteries out of mine so that they don't start going off.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I think we've got another few weeks before we get out of that. Do you think so? The pandemic has changed your attitude towards traveling and photography in any way?
No, not really. I really want to get out there and travel as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And shoot as much as possible.
Mind you, I'd go anyway. I'd give anything to go to Parramatta at the moment.
yeah, exactly. Look, I think we'll get out of this, but it's never going away. So we just have to learn to live with it, and totally. We will. That's all there is to it, right? But I've been trying to go to WA for 2 years.
Have you not been there before?
I've been to Perth like many,
Okay.
many years ago.
Right.
But my girlfriend and I, we were supposed to go to Ningaloo last year,
Nice. Yep.
and then that got postponed to this year. And we were in the clear, right? Like in New South Wales, we were in the clear,
Yeah.
basically. And then a month out is when the first cases of Delta started hitting here.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just was seeing the numbers grow every day, and I'm like, WA is going to close their borders, and of course they did. And so
Yeah.
now we've had to postpone it again.
No, that's a real shame.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to traveling again.
Yeah. Well, if you do go, it's like New South Wales. There's so many places to visit and that you can see. I mean, I love the southwest there. You know, anywhere from sort of Bunbury all the way around to Esperance. You know, the coast around there, and Margaret River, and you know, some of the forests around the southwest. They're all amazing.
Yeah, cool.
A few hours north, you got the Pinnacles Desert north of Perth, and then you head further up, and you got Ningaloo, and you've got Broome and the Kimberley. And yeah, I mean, it's a massive. That's the thing about WA. It's just I don't think many people realise how big it really is. And also how I guess sparse the population is as well. So you can go to some places there that aren't heavily travelled by tourists and literally not see another person for a week.
Yeah, right. That's amazing.
Where you go, But But yeah, you've got everything from forests and coasts and to quite harsh desert scenery. You got the Kimberley, which is sort of almost tropical.
Yeah. Oh, I'm dying to go there.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. One day, too many places.
Yep, the list is long. The list is long. Pardon me. So what's your typical routine when you're out shooting? Or particularly when you're doing sort of woodland or forest shots?
Yeah. So usually when I'm scouting out locations, I do so with my phone, and scouting compositions in general. I just find it easier as opposed to like either hiking with my camera in hand or pulling it out every time. So,
yep.
So I'm always looking out for compositions. With woodland photography, I'm always looking for some kind of pattern or something that sticks out from the rest, and how can I now incorporate that into an image. So usually I'll pull out my phone, try to find a composition, take a few shots, make some minor adjustments, and then if I feel like there's something there and the light is looking nice, then I'll set up my camera. If not, if the lighting isn't right, the conditions aren't right, or I know that I'm just sort of on a scouting mission at the time, I usually kind of make a few notes, take a few more images, and then just make a plan to come back basically. When I know I can get better light or better conditions. Oftentimes with woodland, I would love some great light, but I'm often looking for fog. I think fog really helps to like separate the trees, and really define your subject.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's kind of my process.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So when you've sort of finished with your shooting, what are you looking for when you're processing, when you come back? And I know from my experience, I come back with a kind of a minimum of about 450, 500 shots. So how do you go about selecting the one? Because obviously, particularly doing that forest sort of shooting, you're probably going to take, depending on the dynamic range that you need to cover, you might be doing some blending. I don't know, but you're going to be taking several shots of the same comp. How do you pick the one?
So as you said, in terms of blending, I do bracket most of my shots. I don't always use all the bracketed images, but particularly for the highlights, I usually try to make sure I get a few shots where I've protected the highlights and I can blend those in.
Sure.
It's funny because, when you're on location, you're taking all these photos, and as you said, you come away with like 400 or 500 images easy. With woodland in particular, I can look at a photo and go, okay, I don't like this particular branch that's sticking out of the frame that I didn't see before.
Right.
Maybe I spot it on location, and if I do, I don't try to disrupt the nature in any way in terms of like, I'm not trying to like bust off any branches or anything like that or rip roots out.
That's
but
good.
If I can, if I can sort of use my hand to sort of, tuck it away out of frame while taking the shot, then I'll do that. Sure. Right. So then later on, it's not bugging me so much. But if I missed it and I happen to spot it, in post, I immediately, I don't even start working on those photos.
Wow. Okay.
And I just move on to the next one.
You don't even try cloning them out or anything like that. It's just no.
Unless it's a composition that I'm really excited about,
right?
Then I won't bother. And it also depends on how hard I feel the cloning process will be.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I guess with woodland, it can get a bit complex there. So you're not seeing sort of repeating patterns and whatever, which you see some bad cloning efforts and those repeating patterns here, and you kind of go, oh.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's off in the distance, then it's a lot easier. But if it's something in the foreground, then obviously, it's really kind of easy to spot. Yeah. So
are you one to place an autumn leaf on a rock or whatever, or
do you I have been known to do so.
I have done that, haven't they?
I have done that. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, it seems pretty tedious probably to a lot of people, but oftentimes in those scenes, not that I'm trying to rip out roots, as I said, or like break off any branches, but if there are loose branches in the scene, I will clean up the area.
Yeah.
Because it's easier than cloning out. If I feel that they're a distraction, I will pick them up and just
picking up a branch and moving. It's much easier than getting out the cloning brush. Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I can, and there's been some images where after I put them into Lightroom, I realized like I didn't do that. And, having them side by side with an image or a composition that I have done that with, I'm easily going for that photo.
Yeah, right.
Like that's my preferred comp for sure, because already I can tell there's very few distractions, or fewer distractions, I should say.
Yeah, and I guess with woodland, that's really the main thing that you're trying to avoid is those distracting elements that creep in either to the corners or the edges, or in the foreground in particular, as you say. Background, you can probably you can hide them a little bit better with clever processing. You can bit of dodging and burning is your friend there, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's so easy to get distracted with those kind of photos.
Sure.
So yeah.
So when you're processing, you exclusively in Lightroom, or you a mix of Lightroom and Photoshop, or
I do a mix of both.
Bracketing, it would have to be a mix, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I do a mix of both. I usually start it in Lightroom, and I do like minor adjustments in Lightroom, and when I move it over to Photoshop, if I need to blend images, that's where I do it. All my dodging and burning I do in Photoshop.
Yeah, right.
And then I finish everything off in Photoshop.
Yeah. I'm Photoshop only, mainly because I've pretty much always shot RAW, and Adobe Camera Raw basically has, I think, just about everything that Lightroom has except for the library element.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually just use Windows Explorer as my library.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, I know each shoot is a separate folder in a particular pictures set. So
yeah,
I name them and date them by the location and the month and year that I took them. Unless, of course, I go there twice in a month, which is unusual for me. But
okay.
so I've done it. But then I might have a second folder, which will be March 2 or April 2 or whatever,
Yeah.
But then all I do is just drag and drop them straight into Photoshop, Camera Raw, make
nice.
minor adjustments there, and then into Photoshop for the most of my processing. That's because I bracket a lot.
Yep.
Shooting sunrises in particular, it depends on the conditions. I don't always bracket. Well, and again, like you, I don't always use all of the brackets that I take. Sometimes it's just a single shot. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. Sometimes it's 5.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to have those extra exposures just in case.
Yeah, well, it really helps also in low light when you are you want to deal with avoiding noise, and I find that for me it's easier to bracket and blend and keep your ISO as low as possible. I rarely move the ISO dial at all when I shoot. It's normally stuck on 100. And I'll only really move it if I'm doing something where high ISO is. I just can't get a shot otherwise.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I kind of have a I guess an inbuilt dislike to noise in the shadows. So
yeah,
I'm always taking at least a couple of overexposed just so that I've got the detail in the shadow, and then I can sort of blend that in, and I can always darken that, so that even though somebody might just see a almost black area in the shot, I know there's no noise there.
yeah. Makes you feel better.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it also depends. I do that mainly if I'm printing. If I know I'm going to print the shot, then I'll make sure that there is no noise, because nothing worse than printing noise. It just looks horrible when you got the output. Do you do much in the way of printing or not?
No, not really. I just don't know enough about it. I don't, to be honest, it sounds funny, but I don't really trust my monitor. It's not properly color calibrated. Anytime I've tried to do any test prints, the colors are always off, the brightness is always off.
Yep.
So I just don't. Yeah, I don't trust it enough. Like I feel like there'd be a lot of trial and error.
Sure.
But I'd like to. I think it's important too.
Yeah. No, I got myself a calibrated monitor and then a monitor calibration tool that I now can't live without, because I do print a lot now. And particularly when I've gone for quite a few large format prints recently. And when you're blowing an image up and that it's going to be 1.5 or a metre wide, and a metre tall or whatever, that you kind of got to make sure that you've gotten rid of all the blemishes, because
because it's going to show.
Yeah, and you've got to make sure that the best thing is obviously having a really good relationship with your printing guys as well. Quite often I'm on the phone to them saying, all right, I got an order I want to do with you, and this is kind of how I want it to look. And they, so I send them the image, and they then sort of will give me a bit of a test print, just a small scale one that I can sort of get a look at.
Okay.
Which really helps. But working with the print guys makes a big difference. I also do quite a few books, which I don't. They're just through what's it called, Blurb, I think.
Blurb. Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of those. I mean, there's lots of them about. You basically, you can just bundle up a bunch of photos. You can actually just hit a button and it'll organise them into the pages, and then you hit buy and it'll tell you what it'll cost, and you print it, and a week later it turns up on your door.
Too easy. Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, printing now is literally that easy, and I mean, you can do really, really high quality, looking books and whatever for, I mean, depends. If you put a lot of images in, it'll be much more expensive, but you can pick one up for about $40-50.
Okay.
With 40, 50 pages in it, and it's just really nice to have. It's better than the old school photo albums anyway.
Yeah.
I think.
So when you're working with the guys at the printing house, do they normally get back to you and say, like, okay, you should probably brighten it up or darken it or whatever?
Well, they'll do some of that themselves. So they obviously have monitors which are calibrated to the printer.
Yeah.
But if you've got a black block that they can't get rid of, and they want you to lighten it, they're not going to edit it. They're going to say,
right.
Okay, can you give us a slightly brighter shot of that? But
okay, just because there's not enough detail in that area, or
it depends on what it is. I mean, if it's if it's a really dark night shot that is obviously going to have some blacks in it, but it just depends on how your blacks can just sort of block out, and they become just you lose the separation, you lose the detail.
Sure.
So, it depends on if there's detail in that area or not. If it's if it's a night sky and there's no stars in that sort of part of the sky or whatever, and it's just black, they're probably not going to worry too much about it. Not that I print too many like that, but But I think for anyone wanting to do printing, the relationship you have with your print mob is probably very important to make sure they know what you're looking for. And I've been really impressed with the guys that I've worked with. The Frame Shop.
Okay, where are they based out of?
They're in Roselands, so they're a local company.
Cool.
I've also done some with New Lab down in Melbourne, and they're excellent as well. I think there's quite a few out there. It just depends on sort of prints that you're doing and what size, and there's some people that there's some guys that don't have those very large format printers.
Yeah.
The thing I found about the Frame Shop guys is that they can do, I think they can do acrylic prints up to about 180 centimeters, so almost 2 meters wide.
Yeah.
So if you want that really big statement piece, it's
it's the way to do it.
Yeah, definitely the way to do it. The acrylics aren't cheap though in comparison to other prints.
Yeah. What kind of monitor do you use?
It's an Asus ProArt. What is it? I don't know. It's a 4K monitor, which is probably overkill but it's used for other purposes other than just photo editing. But the Asus ProArt I've found comes fully calibrated. I think there's a new model out. So the one I've got is 34 inch, I think, which allows you to and because it's 4K, you can zoom right in, get really good detail. You're not scrabbling around for space. I used to have two 27-inch monitors. Okay. And they were okay, but I found with the 34, I don't need two monitors anymore. But
it'll be my next purchase, I think. I spent enough money on photo gear, so
yeah. And the Asus weren't. It wasn't hideously expensive. I mean, it's not a cheap monitor, but it's also not the most expensive in the sort of editing and pro art range, or art style range. And the main reason I got it was because it came factory calibrated. So out of the box, you didn't have to calibrate it or change anything. It was
sweet,
set up from the get-go, which is great.
Cool.
So I guess getting back to your photography, do you have a favorite spot to shoot?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I do. Not really. I think when I first moved to Sydney, I wanted, I had a lot of bucket list spots that I want to check out, places I'd never been before.
Yep.
And I think for the most part, I think I've hit them all up, save, a few here or there. And I would certainly go back in better conditions, but yeah, there's not anywhere that I don't have a particular spot that I visit, if I know the sunrise is going to be nice or it's going to be a good sunset. I just sort of play it by ear and decide on the day.
No, fair enough. I do that a lot.
Yeah. Like I've been down to the Opera House shooting heaps. Like, I don't think I really need to go back, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah, I'm surprised by how many times I go. The thing is, you just go in different conditions, and I mean, I still haven't captured sort of lightning and storms or a shelf cloud over the city. So that's still on the list. So
yeah.
Thing is, I'm usually at work when they turn up, because they're normally about 3-4 in the afternoon, and in summer, and so I kind of miss them unless I've got the day off, which is all too rare.
And then you have to watch it on someone's story later on.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you get the FOMO, and say, somebody was lucky enough to be there. It wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of FOMO, are there any particular photographers out there that are catching your eye, and anyone you think I should get onto the podcast?
There's a couple of guys that I've sort of been following for a while, and there's this one guy who goes by the name. I think his name on Instagram is flow.imagery.
Yep. Seen some of his.
He does really good seascape stuff. I think in the water. So he's probably got a housing. He's really great. He really caught my eye recently. There's another guy who goes by the name of Jeff. I think his name is Jeff Freestone out of.
Yep.
I want to say Victoria. And
he
does a lot of
Victorian high country.
Yeah. He does some really nice stuff. A lot of smaller.
I've actually got him on my list of bookings.
Oh, perfect! There you go.
Yeah.
There's so many good photographers out there, right? Like,
no, I know. I could definitely do this podcast for many, many years and not.
Just on Australian photographers, like.
And literally just Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I called it Photography World because I do have a few internationals on the list as well. So some of which will have been released, and others who are upcoming. So
there's a really good photographer out of Vancouver. His name is Tristan Todd.
Okay, I can't say I've come across him before. Mind you, I might have and just not recognised the name.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll definitely look his stuff up and see what he's up to.
Yeah.
So what tips have you got for somebody that wants to start out? They've got themselves a DSLR or a mirrorless, camera that they've just bought and a couple of lenses and hopefully a tripod. What would you say to them if they came to you to ask for advice?
Don't open up an Instagram account.
Go to Twitter. That's
Go to Twitter.
That's where all the cool photographers are.
Exactly. No, I think I would just tell them to, do their own thing and shoot what they're, passionate in shooting, and not, really care about what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing about, when you're on social media, if you're not getting those likes, it's easy to get discouraged and think like, well, I'm
absolutely
not good at this.
You're definitely seeing that in the NFT space at the moment, where people are crawling all over Twitter, not so much on Instagram yet, but crawling all over Twitter saying, I've had these NFTs out there for months and I haven't sold them. And it's like, well, it's interesting, the parallels with, physical art sales. I don't think it's much different. It's the people that do get connected, whose work, they're talented, obviously, whose work is really good. Social media has probably allowed some people that wouldn't normally, get that recognition to gain some recognition. But there's an awful lot of really good photographers out there with really good, stuff that could sell and is saleable. It's just getting it visible.
Yep, exactly. When you have next to no followers, it's like, how else do you get your work out there, right?
That's right. Yeah. Somebody asked me, they were fairly new to social media, and they asked me how I'd sort of got the following that I'd got. Not that I'm, any great shakes at it. And I just said, well, just engage authentically, just, look at other people's work, follow a lot of people.
Yeah.
And comment on their work, retweet if it's Twitter, or, share it on a story because you like it, and don't expect anything in return. That's the main thing. Just don't expect anything in return. And what will happen is that people will see someone that's genuine, somebody that's, got something to say, or, their work's really good or whatever, and they'll start following them,
Yeah, I agree.
The one thing I hate is can you have a look at my account? Will you follow me? After they follow you, and it's kind of like, well, you're a good photographer, but your stuff doesn't make me go, wow. It's not something that I want to see in my feed.
Yeah, exactly.
I think great photography for what it is, but it's it might be somebody's close-ups of flowers or flies or whatever. And I'm absolutely nothing against macro photographers or flower photographers or whatever. That's their thing. Yeah. Just not my thing.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Exactly. I think some people still adopt the model of, well, if I follow you, surely you're going to follow me back.
Yeah.
When people follow me that don't like anything before following me, I'm immediately sus.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, or the strange name with lots of numbers behind it.
Yeah,
I don't even look at those accounts. I don't.
No, there's no post there anyway.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. And then you get all the weird and wonderful DMs. Which you just block or delete.
Yeah, I got one recently, and the person was just like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I looked at the account, and it was, I think she worked in like finance, and I want to say like cryptocurrency, and I just thought, she kept beating around the bush and slowly working her way through the conversation. I just remember thinking,
working to a script.
Hey, where's, like, when are you going to give me the pitch? Like, when are you going to give me the sales pitch? Like, out with it already.
Yeah. Or the like in the post which says DM us for promos. I love them.
Yeah.
I've started responding to a few of them saying why.
Yeah. I was gonna respond to a couple because I
You never
had a
get
few
an answer
DMs.
though, so it's
Yeah,
just
you
for your
don't.
own amusement.
But I had one where it was like, "Oh, we think we took a look at your page. We think you would be great for our product," and it was like promoting like fitness attire. And
Yeah.
I wanted to reply and be like, "Really? Like, what? Why do you think I would be great for this?"
Yeah. Why do you think my photos of trees would match your brand?
Exactly. It's because of all the portrait photos that I put on my account of people wearing fitness gear. Makes no sense.
No. I guess some of them. It's a business model. It's a strange business model. I'd rather work with people that I like and admire, and there's a cohesiveness between brands. If I was running a business, it'd be like, well, yeah, it needs to have a tie-in.
Yeah. And look, I get that it's like a bot just like sending out all those messages, but it'd be so much better to hear from someone going like, look, I know you don't shoot portraits, I know, but your stuff is pretty good. Like, would you consider doing that? And we'll, we can work together. It's like, okay, I can respect that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. So if you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
Oh boy, good question. Well, I used to work in the wine industry back in Canada.
Okay.
So I sort of fell into that, and while I love drinking wine, I wasn't too keen about working in the industry. Getting into photography was really, just starting over, starting fresh, and trying something different. And even though, I love to shoot landscapes, I know the likelihood of being like a full-time professional landscape photographer is, the chances there are pretty
market
slim.
to get into.
It's a tough, exactly. So I got into other forms of photography. So on the side, I shoot weddings and I shoot some underwater stuff as well.
Yep.
So that's, being a photographer is sort of the other thing that I wanted to do. And so if I got out of it now, your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Go and find a job at Woolies stacking shelves.
Yeah.
I'm sure your skills would be well above shelf stacking anyway.
Yeah, I hope so.
Never mind. All right, I've got one last and the most important question. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Absolutely not.
No, you're a no.
Are you a yes?
I'm a neutral.
You're a neutral.
If it's there and there's not much else, if I was ordering one, Hawaiian wouldn't be it.
No, God no.
If there's Hawaiian there and there's nothing else, I'd eat it.
Nah, it doesn't even deserve to be on the table.
I know it's very non-traditional. It's a very polarizing subject.
Look, I love pineapple, but I also love pizza.
Yeah.
And they just don't go together. It's just, I'm sticking to it.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. No, I'm not going to change your mind, and I'm not going to try. I'm not here to try. I'm just here to explore the world's most important questions.
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out, Matt. It's been fantastic having a chat to you, and
no worries.
Really, really pleased to spend some time with you. Where can people find your work?
Just on Instagram. So Toose52, TOOSE 52.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's the best place. Twitter as well. It's just, I think it's just barbeau.matt.
Yep.
Which is a pretty new account, so that's why I don't remember my profile name.
All right, no worries. All right, well, thanks again, Matt. And
no worries. Thanks a lot, Grant. Really appreciate it.
Hope to bump into you sometime out shooting.
Absolutely. I know what you look like now.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Grant. Thanks a lot, man.
No worries. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.